Let's call this meeting to order at 7:01. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ellen, you reading tonight?
I am. I'm all set to go. So, request to withdraw specific items from consent agenda. Nobody.
Second.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Well, now
opposed?
we have to do the approval, Barb. Okay, so we have to go back to B, Lucinda. Approval of consent agenda items. Recommended that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, consensus items be approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
This is the approximate position and time that the board has designated to receive statements from individuals and groups. The board will receive all statements, then respond appropriately at a future meeting. All persons in attendance are required to sign the attendance sheet and designate their representation status. For example, parent, teacher, bus driver, chamber of commerce, etc. There is a 2-minute time limit. Do we have any no emails or anything? So I guess that's it. On to new business. Appointments. Or B. That upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Robert Guglielmi be appointed on probation as a part-time bus driver effective November 3rd, 2020 and ending May 2nd, 2021. Salary is based upon CSEA contract level 9, step 1.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. That upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the following be appointed as election inspectors for the capital project referendum on Tuesday, December 15th, 2020, at the rate of $13.40 per hour, and further authorize the district clerk to fill any vacancies in these positions, which may occur prior to December 15th, 2020, with individuals from the Board of Elections Inspector Personnel List. Rita Sturr, Bonnie Cordell, Marion Phelan, Karen Cornell, Virginia Gunther, Paula Simkowiak.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
Okay. New business, accept bids. That upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the bids for the $100,000 capital outlay project to include ceiling and door replacement at the middle and high school be accepted from Scrufari Construction Company as follows. Base bid, $26,700. Alternate 3, $11,100. Alternate 4, $20,500. Alternate 5, $19,500. Total of $77,800.
Second.
Any discussion? So just something that I found out today in the capital project meeting, that this work is going to be done over December break to basically have the ceilings and doors replaced. So provided we're remote during December at all, they may get in sooner to do it. It's roughly a staff of 4 that are coming in to do it over a week and a half time frame. So that's the time frame for this this project here. So
That's correct. We'll be working with Young and Wright and campus on
the timing of when that work is going to happen, and really examining the latest guidelines that we received today. And I'm sure there's going to be an update tomorrow regarding our status. And I'll let you know if there's any, I'll let the board know if there's any impact on the timeframe based on our new status.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
We didn't do bus route changes. That upon the recommendation of the superintendent, bus route changes be approved effective October 16th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
That upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the 2020-2021 school calendar be amended to move the Friday, December 4th, 2020 staff development half-day to Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020, and to change January 28th, 2021 and January 29th, 2021 to full days of instruction for grades 6 through 12 due to the cancellation of Regents exams.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, if I may, just a point of clarification. So the moving that staff development day from a Friday to a Wednesday is similar to a recommendation that was made to the board earlier this year for a different staff development day. In our hybrid model, Wednesdays are full remote days, where Fridays are in-person instruction days. So it made sense to make sure we maximize the amount of time students are with teachers, and thus moving that half day. The January 28th and 29th changes are in direct relation to the fact that January Regents exams have been canceled. Therefore, Mr. Cervoni and Mr. Lyons recommended we utilize those days as days of instruction for a similar reason that we move that staff development day. And I think that's a best use of time. Of course, based on today's changes, it's important to make these changes with the hope that we're back in our hybrid model when those dates roll around.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
Resolved by the Board of Education of the Eden Central School District that the retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records issued pursuant to Article 57A of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law and containing legal minimum retention periods for local government records is hereby adopted for use by all officers in legally disposing of valueless records listed therein. Further resolved that in accordance with Article 57A, only those records will be disposed of that are described in retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records after they have met the minimum retention periods described therein. Only those records will be disposed of that do not have sufficient administrative, fiscal, legal, or historical value to merit retention beyond established legal minimum periods.
Second.
Any discussion?
I wanted to inform you this is an update statewide. The records retention schedule was very antiquated and now it's being updated. And so local governments across the state have to adopt this.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carried.
Business report.
Good evening. This is an update from last month of where we are on the overall cost for supplies, PPE, and items that directly correlate to the pandemic at Eden Central School. So while we saw that we had a reduction in the overall cost of supplies of around $6,800, and that's because Sometimes the PPE pricings are changing and some of them were favorable from the time we ordered till the time the purchase order is put in till the time we get the ordering done. Sometimes their PPE was not available, so we didn't pay for it. But we believe that we're on track, that we will only have minimal PPE purchases going forward for the rest of the school year, unless, of course, something changed drastically in how we're to handle the COVID pandemic. And then our unemployment cost, unfortunately, has raised about $6,700. So the number is very minimal in its reduction. I think it's about $70.
So Laura, we were given from the CARES Act from the county executive about $148,000. Is that correct?
Yes, but that could also be used for some of the expenditures from the 2019-20 school year. So we're working on getting approval for what funding we can get from FEMA for some of the items. And then we're looking that we've been informed that we will get some sort of funding back for approximately half of our unemployment costs. So we're working in all of that, and it's not to a point where I can tell you exactly what the net district taxpayer cost is yet. And that's going to take quite some time. It'll be months.
No, but we've been monitoring this from day one. You know, just some statements that have been made by the county executive about school districts using that money to patch budget shortfalls. As an Eden school district, I feel very confident that this dollars that was given to us through the CARES Act is being used properly and not being used to patch holes in the standard budget. So thanks for putting this together and tracking it for us as we go through this.
That would be correct. We are not allowed to use the funds to supplant anything for our budget. It is only to be used for pandemic expenses, and we have been informed to have our records ready in case of an audit of such funding in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One other thing, Laura, on the business side of things, I know the cash flow was accepted in the consent agenda. How have our tax receipts gone? Have we gotten a fair amount of what we budgeted, or where do we kind of stand on that?
Well, we never really worry about the tax, because what happens is any taxes that are not paid as of the end of November get re-levied on the county tax bills and the town tax bill, and we are made whole by the county. So we don't have to worry about not receiving our property tax. We do get some interest and penalties for late payments. And all of that work has still been going on, and we're working on reconciling that. It's a task.
One other question. Don't need the exact dollar, but are we seeing dollars being withheld from the state aid that we normally receive?
Well, we're being told that that's going to happen. We saw that happen earlier. We're typically not receiving state aid this time of year because we don't start to receive that till after tax collection time. It's just how the state aid funding mechanism works. And so tomorrow, Mr. Sortisio and I will be doing a webinar with Questar 3 to find out exactly what is going on with our state aid and what their projections are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it?
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
Well, it has been quite the day. Earlier today, Governor Cuomo declared that Eden is in the orange zone. Yesterday, we were not a microcluster at all. And today we have jumped yellow right into orange. What I am proud about is that our team and our teams have been preparing for this for quite some time. Earlier this week, our building principals pushed out our remote learning plans at GLP, at Eden Elementary, and our middle school and high school. I know our cohort D students at the younger grade levels will be getting hard copies of plans over the next 2 days. If they're not posted on our website yet, I'm sure they will be shortly. I do want to point out that each building in this district has what's called an implementation team, and that is a group of teachers and support staff and administrators who have been working really hard since July at developing and designing the plans for how they were going to provide high quality instruction for our students. Our teams feel very confident that the educational product that we will have going forward is going to be robust and significantly improved from what they were able to do in the spring. Now, let's not forget in the spring that we had about 48 hours, no matter what district you were in, to recreate education as we know it. This time we've had the gift of time and good health up until this point in our community to really work together to develop plans. But before I go any further, I want you to understand too, our plans are living documents. We fully expect that through experimentation and trial and error, we're going to have to make some improvements along the way. We knew that when we came back in a hybrid model that it was going to be messy, and we gave people the freedom in the room to do their best, but always work towards improvement. And that ethos will carry forward as we move on to this next adventure. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be in an orange zone and what I know today. And you know what I know today at 7:15 in the evening, because probably by 10 o'clock tonight I'm gonna learn more and know differently as well. We are orange, which means that we are in full remote instruction, but not until Monday, which is different from what I knew earlier today. County Executive Poloncarz had a press conference this afternoon where he announced that schools have until Monday to put in place those parameters that surround an orange district. And I will tell you the first parameter is that all buildings are closed for 4 calendar days starting on Monday. I will be working tomorrow to determine whether essential staff for the infrastructure of the building, think boilers and heating systems and so on and so forth, those things that need attention on a daily basis will be permitted on campus. My instincts tell me that they will. But our teaching staff and our support staff, and for 4 days anyway, at this point, it could change tonight again, our custodial and cleaning staff will be off campus for 4 days. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday is Thanksgiving, so the buildings will be closed anyway. Wednesday was already a holiday or a day of recess for teaching staff and students. And so that's not a major change there. We are open for business in a regular hybrid fashion Thursday and Friday this week. And then we will be in full remote again starting on November 23rd for the foreseeable future. Some districts are announcing an end date of January 4th. It is quite possible and probable that we will be remote for the remainder of the calendar year. But the caveat is that the team and I are working on COVID-19 testing on campus and what that means. We've done a lot of work and a lot of research on what it means to be in a yellow zone. Feel very well versed on if we were in a yellow zone, what we might be able to do. But we skipped that and we're right into orange, which is a different level. I can tell you in a short order that before anyone reports back to campus, including me, after that 4 days, they have to produce a negative COVID-19 test. Okay. I can't force anyone to take a test, of course, but if they want to work on campus, then they have to have been negative on a test. The plan right now is to use the next 2 days distributing materials and information to our students, particularly at the younger grade levels. There were a number of faculty meetings today. I did send out a district-wide communication, which I believe the board gets a copy of. I did send a letter home today to families. In fact, I decided to send it 3 times since the first 2 were wrong, and I apologize for that confusion. The first 2 letters, along with those voice messages, listed November 30th as our first day of full remote instruction. That was incorrect. And again, I apologize. November 23rd, which is this coming Monday, is the first day of remote instruction. There is some question out there about if we have staff on campus, say, for instance, teachers want to be in their classrooms. I want them to be in their classrooms, and they've produced a negative test, whether we have to test on campus. We may need to do that. I am not sure at this point. There are varying legal opinions. I've contacted our partners at Hodgson Russ several times today. I've talked to Brian Liebenau from Labor Relations, and there's a variety of different opinions out there, which I'm sure are being ironed out this evening and tomorrow. And as I told our teaching staff, if I can have you on campus, I absolutely will. I would say the same for our support staff also. Our building principals have done a great job of embedding our teacher aides in to be classroom support, even in a remote environment. So think about teachers who are working with now their full class, which they haven't seen it all at once yet this year, and they're working remotely and they want to do some breakout sessions and so on and so forth. And now they'll have an aide to assist them. Not all of them, but some of them for sure. So I'm happy with that. Food service will continue through the rest of the school year. I'll be working with our food service provider on what that's going to look like. Currently, we provide meals twice a week, well, for 5 days a week, but pickup is twice a week. We are looking at adjusting that to possibly be once a week. But Laura and I will be working with our food service team about what that's going to look like over the coming weeks. Athletics are fully on hold until I think December 14th. The low-risk sports of boys swimming and bowling were scheduled to start December 4th. That's been pushed back to December 14th. High-risk sports right now are scheduled to start on January 4th, but quite frankly, we'll have to see where we are with the infection rate across our area before we even think about those types of sports. I am open to questions from the board if there are any. There are a lot of details that I'll be working on and sharing with you and with the community in the coming days. Any questions from me at this point?
Will there be food service next week?
That's a good question, Marlene. Will there be food service next week? I anticipate that there will be. And by way of me saying this out loud, this is a reminder for Laura and me that we need to make sure that happens. Thanksgiving week is a week where we always want to provide as much as we can for our community, particularly those that are in need. So thank you for that reminder.
Jeff, in regards to cohort C, which is Monday, Tuesday, will they have an opportunity to get back into school? Or do they have everything at home that they needed?
So I did see some communication from, I believe, elementary and GLP inviting cohort C afternoon tomorrow to retrieve materials. I see Mr. Cervone's in the audience, and he's indicating that the middle school and high school will, if they haven't put out a similar communication, they certainly will. But after Friday, there really will not be access to the building.
Okay, so there'll be communication coming out on that then.
Yeah, I believe the communication did go out to certainly our GLP and our elementary. And Jeff, it did go out to the middle school, high school?
I received 2 robocalls while we were sitting here. One from the elementary and one from the GLP.
You were ahead of the game. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Cervone? Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Horschel, I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. I can't tell what's going on in the Zoom. I got a robocall from the elementary And I read the script on my voicemail. It was definitely about picking up materials. And I'm assuming that's what the GLP robocall was about too. So they've definitely gone out to at least those two levels.
Okay.
I don't think the high school or middle school has come out either. I've gotten those, the same ones Jen got, so.
Okay. Well, we can take care of that. Thank you for that. Any other questions or thoughts or concerns? Anything you're hearing from the community at this point?
No, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So in the orange, if a teacher wants to come back, they have to get tested. However, it's not, I mean, obviously as a district, we can't mandate them to get tested, so they'll just be teaching from home.
So I caught about half what you said, Jen,
Oh,
but let
I'm
me try
sorry.
and fill that in. No, that's okay. You said if a teacher wants to come back, they have to be tested. I heard that. That's absolute, yes. And it has to be negative, of course. But beyond that, we may have some testing requirements that we have to do on campus. And now I'm working on the application to get our LSL, which is your limited service license. And if we're able to get that in partnership with our medical director, then we can order tests directly from the Department of Health, Erie County Department of Health. The next step then would be to train staff, medical staff, to conduct the testing. If we have students on campus, I cannot expect our nursing staff to be able to do that. They are incredibly busy right now with the added COVID responsibilities already. I have had some brief contact with a couple of agencies in the area, really via email, that may be able to provide staff to us. But again, I was gearing up for yellow, thinking we can have, our students on, on campus in our hybrid model, test 20%, et cetera. And that's down the road, that now yellow could be down the road, because typically you're going to transition from orange to yellow. You're not going to jump a level like we did today. And you're not going to go orange to nothing. I highly doubt that, particularly if the areas that are adjacent to us continue to be in orange. Typically, when you've got an orange designation, there's a yellow buffer zone around it. And you can see that when you look at the Erie County map right now. Some of those areas around us are yellow, and I think there's a consistent buffer zone around all of the orange. So I need to think about, if we have staff on campus during orange, whether our nursing staff could handle whatever the testing level is. I think it's 25% we need to test under orange. But when I say I think, it's because things that I read that I was sure about changed on the fly today. And that's the way this has been. So we continue to modify and adjust. I do want to say, let's go back to, transitioning to yellow at some point. I put that survey out. Really, it was more of a barometer than any scientific poll, for sure. We had about 55% of the 420 or so folks who responded say that they either would not allow their child to be tested, or they were unlikely to do so. And that's okay. That's fine. Particularly with the information we had when we put that survey out, because we didn't know what kind of test would be available to a school district. The districts, the tests that will be available to us are a Bionex test, which is a shallow nasal swab, not the back of your nasal cavity almost to the back of your head type swab that so many people have experienced, and it's so uncomfortable. It's really just the interior of the nasal cavity, and it's much less invasive, of course. The important thing I want the community to understand too is, when we get to a point when we can bring students back, as the rules are right now, if a parent refuses to allow their child to be tested, that child cannot be banned from learning on campus. And that's a relief to me. I was afraid that we would get the opposite rule, that if they're not tested, they can't be here. Well, there's choice in this country, and there's choice for parents and their children, and there's choice for our staff as well. The tricky part gets to be, how do we get to 20% of the roughly 1,600 students and staff here? But again, that's down the road, so I kind of digress. I need to do a lot more work on what we can do, or might be able to do in orange, I can tell you that to bring students back in orange, I believe, and I'm sorry that I'm not definitive on this, but you understand why, I believe we have to be testing at 100%. I don't know how to do that. I don't know, the manpower, the woman power to do that. I'm befuddled as I sit here and talk to you as a board, and I apologize that I don't have a clear answer on that. But I also promise you that I'll get to one.
Jeff, that's on my understanding from what I heard from Cuomo and from the Erie County. It was 100% to start, I believe, and then 25% each week thereafter.
Yeah, Alan, I heard something similar to that too, and that's why I was a little bit confused. So I do know, and I did hear today that they are coming out with updates for school districts and what it means to be in orange. So I'm hoping for some clarity. I think the board knows that I'm in regular meetings with all the Area 2 superintendents. That extended to Area 1 superintendents as well recently. So you've got a lot of really bright people working on this and trying to determine what it means. You heard me earlier talk about the advice we're getting from our board counsel and other legal advice. Missy Hartman and I had a couple of conversations today. So it's a whole community coming together, really, trying to figure out how we can move forward. You're going to hear in the coming weeks that some districts are ahead of us. Well, they should be ahead of us. They had a jump on planning for these things before we did, and that's okay. This isn't a race. It's certainly not a sprint. And we will put together what is best for our community and what our community will support. So whether it's starting at 100% and then moving to 25%, if we can do that, we will. We do know, and you all know because you get the letters, that we've had increased incidents of positive cases on campus. I can tell you with one exception, we have not had one instance of confirmed transmission on campus, with one exception. These cases that we have to report, it's typically a student or staff member who is exposed to a family member and then eventually comes out, or friend or whatever it is, comes out positive. And the result is we need to quarantine a lot of people, whether it's a class full of students or whoever else, the child comes in contact with. And you can imagine in a district of our size, where, we're on a smaller side, but a couple of infections can really put a lot of people in quarantine from all walks of life. Could be a driver, could be an aide, could be a teacher, could be classmates. And we are faced with a significant amount of quarantines right now, particularly at our middle school and high school. Yet we've only had a handful, I would say, of positive cases. So I share that with you and I share that with the public, just so that they're aware that while we don't report on quarantines. We never said we would report on quarantines. That would be impossible to provide updated information on a regular basis in that area. But I share that because an infected person can really impact an awful lot of others. So let's go back to all those things that we know are important. Washing our hands, social distancing, wear a mask. I'm not wearing a mask right now, but I'm also about 12 to 15 feet from anybody else on this stage. You've heard Governor Cuomo say over and over again in County Executive Poloncarz about, being cautious about family gatherings and being very cautious about travel. And they say these things for a reason, and they're hard to hear. They're hard for each of us personally. I certainly understand this. This will be I won't be able to see my parents for Thanksgiving other than maybe through the window and wave to them. And that's very difficult, but it's what I need to do to keep them safe. So I hope our community takes that to heart. I think you can see the timeline around Halloween and around some of those more exciting Bills games that things started to heat up, not just in Eden, but everywhere. We've been in a long haul, and you get tired and you get a little complacent and Things got much better in the summer as they told us they would, and things are getting worse now as they told us they would. We are in the very beginnings of our difficult season without COVID. We've had a great November. It's just starting to get rainy and cold and shutting us in now. So now is not the time to get complacent. Now is the time to be reinvigorated and reinforced about doing the right things for each other and for our neighbors and for our children to hopefully get them back to school as soon as possible.
Can I ask one more question, Jeff? Can you hear
Yes.
me? When we talk about testing, there seemed to be, just from watching the news the last couple of days, a lot of back and forth about who is paying for it. And I know, I believe the county executive said that the state, I'm still honestly unclear. Do we know for sure?
Yeah.
Would we get reimbursed? How are we getting reimbursed?
Yeah, I can explain that to you. So, but before I move on, I thank you for asking that question, because this reminds me that I sat at this very seat a number of months ago and I told our community, I'm not testing your children. That's not our job. Schools are not in the business of testing children. It's become our job. And that's because of the capacity of the Erie County Department of Health, and no fault of theirs. But you're looking at school districts across Erie County who are in this position. So we certainly didn't ask for this work, but we'll embrace it if it gets kids back to school. And in your question specifically on cost and who pays for it, it depends on how we do it. So if we test ourselves, and we get that LSL, and we test ourselves, we can get tests for free from the county. Okay. And those are the shallow nasal swabs I described. There's also an option to partner with a community agency to handle the testing on behalf of the school. In that case, there's a per test charge. And I've heard reports from other superintendents of anywhere between $75 and $150 per test. And then we also have to pay their labor costs. You are talking about tens of thousands of dollars for some districts per week. In our district, using $100 test, which is a little bit lower than the average, that's about $3,200 just for the tests. The labor cost would be on top of that. So if I come back to you and say the only way we can test is to partner with someone else, I would have a cost estimate for you as well. But that would be absolute last resort. You know, as Laura pointed out already and Don asked, we're already faced with a 20% holdback on our aid. We don't know what it's going to look like going forward, hoping to learn more tomorrow afternoon. At this point, we did not receive transportation aid for last year. That's at about $300,000 that was withheld. There's a slim possibility, or a slight possibility, I should say, that comes back. So to go that route of partnering with someone else to handle our testing, you know, the financial side of it would have to be palpable. And for what I know right now, it's not.
Would you say partner with an agency, or, well, let's back up. How does a district become an LSL?
You become an LSL by applying, and there's an application process. Of course, there's a $200 fee to apply as well, just a little bit more salt in the wound. And through our medical director or another willing partner, you can work under their license. Now, there is word out there that New York State Department of Health has directed the Erie County Department of Health to allow schools to work under their license, but that really hasn't come to fruition yet. I don't know what's going on with that. That's their world and their business. I'm going to continue to work with our medical director to find out if there's a way for us to do that. I mean, that is, you know, so if we get that LSL, the next step is to figure out, you know, the manpower, the woman power to get that work done.
And then if it were to be the more expensive choice, what does it mean by partner with an agency, like a
That
medical
means
agency?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What did you say there,
With
Cheryl?
a medical agency, or like a visiting nurse type thing, the VNA, things like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good example. I haven't done a lot of digging on that yet. primarily because some of the schools that were ahead of us started sharing what the cost would be, and I said, there's just no way.
That's a
And,
lot.
you know, there was one school district very close to us. It was $75,000 a week. Much bigger district, of course, but 75 grand a week. And that's just, you know, so say you, and again, this is under yellow, okay? Orange is a different animal. This is under yellow, and you have to test 20%. And if you come underneath the, I'll say countywide metric, which right now I believe is 5.6, might be a little bit higher. So if you come in under that, you can either discontinue testing or you can move testing to biweekly. I've read it both ways. Okay. Well, that's all well and good, but let's just use our district as an example. If we were in yellow and we had to test 320 staff and students a week, and the local metric, countywide metric was 5.6, and we came in at 5%, that's 16 positive cases. So 16 positive cases means we don't have to test anymore, or we don't have to test for a couple of weeks, and we can continue in our model. I don't know. I think having 16 positives in, you know, we'll divide it evenly, 4 per building. That's a lot.
Well, then bring the quarantine in.
Pardon me?
Bring in the number of people that you have to quarantine off those 16 people.
Exactly,
I mean, it
Don.
just-
Bring
it
in the
just
number of
multiplies
people we have to
before we
quarantine.
gotta
And we know how many we've had to quarantine just with one a day for the last 3 or 4 days. So, you know, here's the doom part is we're walking into a lot of unknown when it comes to testing and being in orange, okay? The positive part is what we talked about earlier, and that's the fact that we've had the benefit of time. We've used that time to plan what I think is effective. We've gotten better at communication, and we're going to continue to improve on communication. I have to give our teaching staff and our support staff and our administrators a lot of credit with how creative they've been and you know, the different things that they've put into place. So, you know, we are in a great position to pivot to remote instruction. I would feel better about it if I was able to bring people on campus, because I know what technology we have here. I know what kind of Wi-Fi we have here. We're not, you know, our teachers would not be, you know, handcuffed based on whatever service is available in their area. So that's going to be one other thing we have to overcome. Other questions?
Nothing
Okay.
on this end.
I'm sorry, Don?
Nothing on this end.
Okay. So listen, I mean, you know, this feels really heavy, and it is. It really is. You know, we've got 2 more days with the kids, and then we've got to send them away for a while. But we're going to be working in earnest to bring them back when we can, when it's safe. And through your support as a board and through the work of our different teams, we're in a good place to keep moving forward. And let me say this too. This isn't maintenance of instruction like it was in the spring. This isn't, let's just keep them where we got them because we're only going to be out 2 weeks. That's not, and you know, that's not, it has not been in our planning. It is, how do we continue moving the educational program forward? You know, how do we continue to provide new material with the systems that we have so that we keep moving our students forward? Will it be at the same speed and as what we can do while they're here? Probably not, but it will be moving forward. Okay.
Student report. Caleb.
Hello. So I don't have much on our end. What I would say is, you know, there is complete understanding on the students' end of what we're going to have to be able to do and work through, especially over the past couple of hours when we jumped to the orange. We weren't really expecting that. We were expecting a little bit of yellow, but I mean, there's understanding on our part, and we're willing to work forward, of course, with what we're given. I would say that we're set up as far as on the students, and we're set up pretty nicely to go into from hybrid to full remote based on the two remote days we get a week, plus that asynchronous day. We're over the course of the past couple of months, we've kind of adapted to what those days require and what Zoom calls require, what our schedules require. So, and then on that topic of Zoom calls, that would be the biggest disconnect, I would say, is that difference between the in-person instruction and the Zoom call. Because, instead of having that one-on-one, just like having a teacher in front of you, there is that just natural disconnect through the medium of Zoom that we just have to work through. And I mean, Zoom is definitely the best option that we have for the hybrid. It'll have that instruction support where from March till June we weren't getting that in last spring, but now to be able to have that is definitely beneficial to us because we always, like every single day, have that teacher to be able to still keep in contact with us. So that's really helpful. And yeah, and I mean, as far as when I was talking with students about like testing and stuff, like I got the same really comments back that survey, the results showed, which about a little bit more than half the kids that I talked with said that they didn't want to be tested. They would rather go for remote, and about half said that they're willing to get tested because they like to be able to go to school on campus, and they're willing to make that own personal sacrifice to be tested. And my last note is, I'm not in elementary or GLP anymore, but I do suspect that the hybrid model would be a little bit more difficult on the younger kids just because they really, really require that really personal hands-on type of learning style where as high school students, we're able to just follow a Zoom schedule and we're able to work through that fine. I mean, some of us are about to go to college where we're going to have to be faced with that anyway. So I do think, though, to just really encompass all of the students in this district in this report, that it would definitely be a little bit more difficult on their end. But I definitely know that at least, the teachers that I've had in the past and the staff there, that they'll be able to think of something and be able to work forward with it. So that is what I have on my end.
Okay, board report, roundtable.
I know from my standpoint as a special ed teacher, and I worked for Erie 2 BOCES at Baker Road School in Orchard Park, what we've done in the past week to prepare for this is a big thing, other than learning as we went along through the spring and the summer, is, as Mr. Sartisio said, the kids now know, and we know, that just doing enough to get by and to maintain is not the case anymore. We have specific, periods lined up for kids to Zoom. Yes, the periods are shortened somewhat, so they're not in front of a Zoom call for, 6.5 hours a day. But I just think we have all districts have learned a lot. And I think it's again, it's not, as Caleb said, it's not the ideal situation to be remote, but if you go back to April, it's certainly not the worst situation like we all thought it was in April. I myself would prefer to be at school in front of my students, and they've even said the same thing. But at the same time, I think the way districts are setting things up right now, including Eden and all the work that's gone into it, their kids are getting a little more accustomed to that, and they'll adapt and do what they're supposed to do in hopes to go back. But that's how I'm looking at it anyway.
I'd just like to, go ahead, Jen.
No, you go, Don.
No, I'd just like to thank the administrative staff for basically getting the message out. It was very concise in regards to what came out earlier this week, knowing that, something was coming, based on the numbers and where things were headed. But special thanks to all the administrative staff to get that information out. Nice job.
No, it definitely was. I'm a big fan of bullets, and I loved all the bullet points in the email. It was very easy to read. Just real quickly, on Saturday, I attended the Erie County Association of School Boards legislative breakfast, which was virtual, which was a bit of a bummer because they usually have really good food. So I didn't get my little treats in this year, but that's okay. There was a few, not as many representatives. There was a representative from Senator-elect Ryan's office. He took over for Chris Jacobs, who took over Chris Collins's seat. John Rivera, who took over the assembly seat from Sean Ryan, or won, I should say. And then Bill Conrad, who I'm not super familiar with, but he is in the 140th assembly seat. Nobody who really represented us in large quantity. Senator-elect Ryan does have part of Eden in I think he's the 60th district, but the 59th district, which Gallivan holds, is, I think, what's the biggest chunk of Eden. But nonetheless, they talked about the connectivity issues with technology and how COVID has really exposed and highlighted the cracks in technology that still exist for a lot of these families, whether they're rural or suburban or urban. They exist everywhere. And, just how the lack of access to broadband, things like that. They also talked about the loss of transportation aid. There was a lot of talk about that, how people were frustrated that there was a woman named Ruby Harris. I think she's from Grand Island, maybe. That, we've been not we, but, the superintendents, the finance directors have been pushing to find out about that aid for months, and it just finally came to light now. They also talked about still working on aid, foundation aid, and going back to the free and reduced lunch and how we need better measurements and something more consistent than free and reduced lunch. There was a little bit of talk about reducing the requirement for 20% testing, which is moot now because everybody's in orange, so it doesn't really matter right now. And I don't see, to Jeff's point, if you're testing all those kids and 10% will find fewer. It just, now in hindsight, it doesn't seem worth it. But the biggest push that they made was right at the end. They talked about this phrase that is the first time I heard it. They're calling it the pandemic adjustment, which they're likening to the GEA, and that needs to be our new big push. It needs to be something we watch for. All of the representatives who were there said that they would love to see some stability in educational funding, that it's too inconsistent and there's too many factors that, too many mandates that were given that are likely not supported or often not supported, including the transportation aid. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about how, school districts delivered meals and delivered instructional materials, and that was transportation, and none of that was aided. So there is another legislative meeting tomorrow. It's virtual, so I'll plan on attending that. And then there's a speed boarding meeting coming up through Erie County Association of School Boards on December 3rd. As much as I hate the virtual stuff, it's much easier to attend the Erie County Association of School Boards stuff virtually because they seem to, for whatever reason, their schedule aligns right with ours. So the meetings are always back to back. So I do like the virtual option. Just driving sometimes all the way out there is a bit of a haul, but I mean, it was interesting. A lot of people commiserating really is more of what it was, but the pandemic adjustment, that was an interesting term, and I think one we should watch. That's all I have.
Anything else? Just as we start to look at the calendar, our next meeting is scheduled for December 16th. We have a capital budget vote the day before that, so just FYI. I know we got another public meeting prior to that, but next budget or next Board of Education meeting is after the capital project vote. So encourage people to get out and vote as we determine how they're going to be able to get out and vote. So.
So future dates, public meeting on proposed capital project, Wednesday, December 9th, 6 PM, Eden Elementary Auditorium. Capital project vote, Tuesday, December 15th, 2020, 9 AM to 9 PM, Eden Middle School and High School Auditorium Foyer. The next regular Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, December 16th, 2020, at 7 PM in the Eden Elementary School Auditorium. Okay, now we go into executive session. We just do the B thing, enter. That upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education enter executive session to discuss this employment history of a particular person.
Second.
Lucinda, are we jumping off into a separate room on this?
What was that?
Can you hear me? I'm going to give Mr. Sorticio the hosting of this meeting and have everyone else leave. So you can stay right where you are. Just give me a minute to shut everybody else out. How's that?
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly.